I'm standing here in Skyrim's water wondering, can I find anything interesting deep in the rivers? Maybe some hidden treasure or even a mystery just waiting to be uncovered. I've never really looted the rivers before, so I thought why not dive in and find out. Sometimes I've checked here and there but never found anything interesting, so I didn't look further. This time I've decided to explore all the rivers I can see on the map and even more. Lakes, waterfalls and swamps. Just not the sea, it's a bit too vast for this adventure. Oh, and no water in caves, dungeons or cities, just everything outside. To make the underwater exploration more interesting, I've installed a few mods to add some water plants and clear up the water so we can see everything clearly. However, I didn't add any mods for extra underwater treasures since I want to focus on the vanilla loot. Of course, I chose an Argonian for this challenge because, well, breathing underwater makes things a whole lot easier. Meet Arnie, my Argonian. He's pretty strong, just look at how much he can carry. Yeah, I cheated a bit and increased his carry weight to 500 using a console command because I want to collect everything and sell it all to see how much I can make. I have no idea how much carry weight I'll need, so 500 seemed like a safe bet. I'm starting with 0 gold, 100 lockpicks and a dagger to protect myself from those damn slaughterfish. Yeah, I installed a mod to let me fight in the water, plus one for some nice swimming animations because just look at how much better it is than the vanilla movements. The plan is to cover the whole map. I've divided it into sections to make it easier and we're starting with section 1, the lake just above Falkreath. So let's dive in. As you can see, I grabbed my dagger since I tested the mod, and while I can fight underwater, I have to hold the weapon before diving in. For some reason, I can't equip it once I'm submerged. Not sure if the mod is supposed to work like that or if I messed something up during installation. Anyway, I found my first treasure pretty quickly, but of course, slaughterfish was already on my tail. So yeah, having the dagger ready was definitely a good call. Now, let's check out the chest. It was locked, so good thing I came prepared with 100 lockpicks. Inside, I found some gold, a staff and a Welkin stone. By the way, I plan to mark all the treasures on my map, so I don't lose track. After that, I decided to go weapon free for a bit so Arnie could swim with both hands. Next up, I found another chest in the lake, but there wasn't anything too exciting in it. However, nearby I spotted a skeleton. He had some gold, which I took because, well, he won't be needing it anymore. Makes you wonder how this poor guy ended up here, but I guess we'll never know. So, time to mark the place on the map. Later, I stumbled on a wrecked ship with another chest. Sadly, it just had some coins inside. But on the upper part of the ship, I found an axe and accidentally broke a skeleton's hand while looting it. After that, I decided to check out the river near the mill, and that turned out to be pretty interesting. As I followed the river downstream, it got smaller and smaller until it didn't even show up on the map anymore. Eventually, I found a camp and followed the stream to a waterfall with a tiny lake, or maybe it was a swamp or pond, not sure. But there was a body in the middle, which, let's be real, counts as a treasure in this video. The body turned out to be an alchemist. Nothing too interesting to loot, but hey, better than nothing. I also found a book that increased my alchemy skill, so that's a nice bonus. Back to the lake now. I found one more interesting spot, but of course more slaughterfish came for me. Check out this location though. The current made it tricky to gather everything, but I grabbed all the loot I could find, including the items in the chest. Next, I followed the river down to Riverwood and didn't find much. Just beautiful views and waterfalls. Oh, and Arnie decided to take a bath along the way. As I kept swimming and exploring, I reached the fields around Whiterun. From here, I decided to check the water southwest of Whiterun and found a fun discovery. A skeleton hand sticking out of the water holding a sword. Sure, it's just a steel sword, but the spot has some serious charm and hey, I can still sell it for some gold. So yeah, it counts as a treasure. After that, I didn't find anything too exciting, so I headed back to the river near Whiterun. Following the river turned out to be trickier than I expected. Those waterfalls really made things difficult. At one point, I found a dead woman near the river, but honestly, it didn't feel like she had any connection to the river, so I left her there. Plus, she didn't have anything interesting worth taking. Then, in the distance, I spotted a big fire. My first thought was that it definitely looked like a giant's campfire, but when I got closer, I was shocked to see a pile of burning goats instead. What a sight! It kind of felt like a warning, like I wasn't welcome here. Naturally, that made me even more curious, so I checked out the area nearby, and just as I suspected, a giant was hanging out preparing his dinner. Later, I came across another body near a waterfall. Guess it's not just me who finds this place is dangerous. This guy was submerged in the water, so I looted him. As I was admiring the view, I noticed something on a fallen tree above the waterfall. It looked like a person. Curious, I decided to check it out, and when I got closer, I found another body. That's when I spotted a Khajiit sitting on the tree. At that point, I knew I was in trouble, and sure enough, he attacked me. And of course, I didn't have my dagger equipped, so I hurried to grab it, and luckily it was enough to take him down. I wasn't planning on looting him, but then I noticed he had a backpack, so I thought, why not? Extra carry weight is always useful. From now on, I'm keeping my dagger and that backpack equipped. I just needed to remember that I can sell the backpack at the end of the journey. Back to the main river. I found another interesting spot by a waterfall. It looked like the remains of a hut with another body inside. This guy had plenty of loot, but since he wasn't actually in the water, I left all of it. Well, except for one thing, a treasure map. How perfect is that? I'm out here treasure hunting and now I've got a map. It showed a drawing of a bridge and a waterfall somewhere near Riften. So convenient, since I was already heading that way and the treasure should be in the water. What a coincidence. I continued along the river, but the first bridge I found didn't have a waterfall, so it wasn't the spot on the map. Later, I came across another bridge with a waterfall, but the signpost didn't match the drawing either. At this point, I decided to take the left path toward Ivarstead, planning to head to Riften first and then come back using the second path later. But the waterfalls kept getting in my way, making it impossible to climb. So I switched plans and took the other path instead, but I ran into the same problem, too many waterfalls. Eventually, I decided to head to Riften using the land route and then follow the river downstream from there, hoping it'd be easier going with the current. Along the way, I found a few more bridges with waterfalls, but still no luck finding the treasure. After some time, I finally reached Riften. I checked the lake really carefully, then moved onto the river to Ivarstead and found nothing. Not a single chest. But there was one funny moment. I heard some wolf sounds and a bit later I saw a guard swimming in the water. And not just in the water. Check out his moves. He was swimming with such grace. Even Arnie was fascinated by the whole scene. I kept going and came across a bunch of waterfalls and a troll cave that looked absolutely devastating. I thought going downstream would be easier, but of course, sometimes it turned out to be deadly. With no treasure in sight, I decided to head back to Ivarstead to check the other path. Almost immediately, I stumbled upon another waterfall, and while I loved the view, going down the Skyrim way wasn't easy again. But this time it paid off. I found a chest. Further downstream, I discovered this cool spot with an entrance to a dungeon. I also checked out the stream next to the one I used, but there was nothing interesting there. So I got back to where I kicked off my journey to Riften, and before I swam over to Windhelm, I figured I'd check out the hot springs. I gave Arnie a little break after all those tough experiences. He definitely deserved it. I checked out all the water spots I could find and only came across one chest, but there wasn't much to loot. I also found a skeleton with a sword nearby. Besides that, I stumbled upon a spot with the Atronach stone and some sort of table that looked like it was meant for making sacrifices. After spotting a running skeleton, I quickly left the area. Then there was another table with bodies, and just when I wanted to check it for loot, I got attacked and had to make a quick escape. The bodies weren't so close to the water anyway, so that's fine. Oh, and there was a giant near one of the hot springs. The whole place is nice, but not many treasures to be found. If I missed any loot, let me know. Okay, back to the river. The plan now is to swim to Windhelm. On my way, I stumbled across a shack inhabited by a saber cat. Interestingly, there was a campfire, and I guess the previous owner's story didn't exactly have a happy ending. When I finally reached Windhelm, Arnie was freezing in the water. I'm glad I wasn't playing in survival mode, or that would have been a real nightmare. When I spotted a campfire near the river, I let Arnie warm up because it was just sad seeing him covered in ice, practically frozen. Now he looks much better, at least for a little while, because I still needed to check the lake. Swimming under the ice was a pretty cool experience, but unfortunately no luck there either. No treasures to be found, just a cave with some dwarven remains outside. Alright, let's head back to Windhelm and take a look at the water heading out to the sea. Seriously though, why are people tossing garbage in there? Come on folks, let's keep Skyrim beautiful. No one wants a trash-filled river. So so I decided to swim out towards the edge of the island. On the way, I came across another cave entrance, which was cool, but other than that, not much. Though the underwater plants were surprisingly nice here, way more interesting than in other places I'd seen. And finally, something big, a wrecked ship. I found 2 chests with loot, but nothing special inside, just the usual stuff. Honestly, it would be so much more exciting if we could find some really powerful treasures. That'd give us a reason to explore every corner of the map. Anyway, it wasn't just the chests. There were bandits too. I might have cheated a little, taking out a few of them while still in the water, since they couldn't attack me back. But the chief was a real problem. One hit from him and my poor level 1 Arnie was almost dead. I had to get out of there real fast. The shipwreck was super cool, though it makes me wonder if there are more out there hiding in the deep sea. Next up is to check out those 3 lakes on the map. The first one was more like a pond with goldfish swimming around. It was my first time seeing goldfish on this challenge. I didn't find anything too interesting on the small island, though maybe I should have looked closer. But the crabs didn't make it any easier. It's actually pretty funny that they're tougher to fight than wolves. 2 hits from one and Arnie was almost dead. Then I headed over to check the next pond, but I was surprised to find just a bandit camp, no water inside. I thought it might be frozen, but there was nothing to back that theory up. The last spot was really nice, with more goldfish. There was a chest here, but since it wasn't underwater, I left the loot behind. Alright, it's time to explore the area around Solitude. The water here felt darker for some reason, even though the day was nice and bright. I checked out the bay, but there was absolutely nothing, just a regular ship with people on it. Not a wrecked one like I was hoping for. Then I checked the river near the town and decided to explore the swamps since I hadn't found anything else except for some camp that probably belonged to bandits. I must admit, the swamps were a real headache. I wanted to check every little corner and it felt like I was in a maze. I swear I must have gone in circles a few times. I didn't pull out the map too often because up to that point it was easy to follow the river. But this area, total confusion. It was quite the experience. Anyway, I stumbled upon a few cool spots like the Apprentice Stone and that bandit camp. And finally, some real treasure. Well, I found a chest, but the loot wasn't particularly interesting as usual. The place felt like a crab house and I had to get out of there quickly. I didn't want to mess with those guys. I took the loot since the area was surrounded by water and there was a lot of it inside. As dusk fell, the swamps took on a whole new vibe. The fog and the lightning made everything feel so much more atmospheric. I especially liked this area with the little shack, just look at that place. And of course the slaughterfish had to ruin the moment. They always show up when you least expect them. When I was being cautious, there wasn't a single one inside. By the way, I checked the shack, but it was locked. I decided to change the time because it was getting too dark to see well while hunting for treasures. I did find one more chest with some gauntlets, but since it was on solid ground, I left it behind. So I checked out all the swamps and decided to follow the river toward Whiterun. I discovered the crabber's shanty and even came across an alchemist's body, but nothing in the water itself. I went back to the crabber's shanty to explore the rest of the river, and besides the beautiful views, some different waterfalls and more bandit camps, I didn't find any hidden treasures. Let's head back to the main river. I was ready to check out the rest of the stream, but spotted a small lake I just had to explore first, so let's start there. On the way, I ran into some travelers who offered me a drink, and hey, why not? Arnie totally deserved a little break after everything he's been through. At the center of the lake was an island with a chest. Finally! It wasn't underwater, but it still felt like part of the lake's treasure. Of course, nothing exciting inside. More surprising was getting attacked by a spriggan out of nowhere, so I had to run away pretty quickly. Opening the chest must have triggered the spriggan to appear. Alright, let's return to the river. I followed the stream and finally found a chest tucked just under a waterfall. Honestly, I thought I'd find more chests in the falls or maybe even a secret cave behind one, like in other games, right? But this time it actually happened. The loot was a bit better than in some other chests, but still nothing thrilling. And yeah, there were a lot of waterfalls, so climbing got tricky. Had to approach it the Skyrim way, if you know what I mean, and you know. During my water exploration, I stumbled across a few interesting spots. Deep Folk Crossing looked pretty nice. After that, I swam further down and reached Markarth. Unfortunately, not much to see there. A bit later, I came across another chest in the water with some loot, and next to it was a boat with a locked box and a few other things to grab. That was the last treasure I found. I also stumbled upon a few other cool places along the way. Here are some of them. So during my journey, one thing kept bugging me, a treasure map. I carefully checked every bridge and waterfall on my way to Riften, but I found nothing. There was only one place I hadn't checked, the path marked on the map that had no water. But well, I'd already stumbled upon some spots that hadn't been marked on the map but had water, like that pond at the beginning. And guess what? This was the same case. I finally found the spot and it matched the drawing perfectly. Before I could start exploring, I had to deal with some bandits. Once I got rid of them, I looked around but couldn't find anything. Finally, I spotted a body at the bottom of the waterfall, but it didn't feel like that was it. Probably just someone taken out by those bandits. Of course, I grabbed the gold from around the body, then climbed back up and noticed a chest in the waterfall. There it was. I can't believe I missed it the first time. I was a bit sad about the loot inside though. Okay, now it's time for the final task. I want to sell all my stuff. So I headed to Whiterun. I dropped my backpack, dagger and most of the lockpicks, leaving myself with just 15. That's about how many I found. I wanted to be sure I wouldn't accidentally sell my starting gear, but then one of the citizens approached me trying to take it all. How rude was that?
Well, what'd you go dropping it for? Got my hopes up for nothing.
Arnie had to drop everything since he has no home to store it in. Got it, citizen? So I went to Adrian and sold her everything I could. Then I popped into Arcadia's shop and did the same thing. My last stop was Bellator. I had to sell the rest of my stuff in a few rounds since he didn't have enough gold to buy it all at once. In the end, I earned around 3000 gold. Not exactly a fortune, right? There are definitely better ways to make money in Skyrim. Oh, and Arnie quickly went back for his things because he was so afraid that mean citizen would grab them. And that's all. Those are all the treasures I found in Skyrim's waters. But do you know of any nice treasures I missed? It would be fantastic to discover more valuable finds, not just in terms of gold, but also unique weapons and armor that you can't find anywhere else. Have you tried any treasure hunting challenges on your own? Share your stories in the comments below. Until next time, thanks for watching!